see
Okay,
here.
so I think mine is on. Let's see.
Yeah, yours is doing the countdown right now too.
Okay, good. Yep, mine looks like it's live.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Perfect. So we should, yeah. So let me go ahead and switch over to the Minecraft stream, and I will get back to game. There we go. All right.
Hello.
Hello. Let me make sure that it is, in fact, streaming. There is, of course, quite a delay.
Yeah, there's a bit of a delay.
Yeah, so not as bad as what I experienced on Thursday, which was like a delay of 5 or 6 minutes until it finally caught up.
That's
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
I've never seen it
Super
that
bizarre. Yeah, it was really weird. Thankfully, I only did have the one person in stream, and they were keeping me sort of apprised of what was going on. So yeah, it was kind of a pain in the butt for it to do that. But all right, so we are here with the contestants from the
bad. Woohoo.
Minecraft Archaeology Challenge. We're just going to talk a little bit about the challenge and sort of the hardships and what you liked and what you didn't like and some things like that. And just some general questions. We're going to take some questions from people watching as well.
Awesome.
I did ask my subscribers if they had any questions to ask you that they wanted me to ask you. Oh, you have been sitting for an hour. You just got the,
Yeah, you just got the couch potato.
you got the
That's
couch
right.
potato thing.
Starting
Yeah.
the stream by winning.
That's
Nice.
right.
Hold on,
Uh, So, all right, cool. Well, so just to sort of to there you go. Yeah.
GG.
To start this off, just I kind of want to go around and just get everyone's general impressions of the challenge. What was hard, what was you thought was easy, what was interesting. Just your general impressions of this whole thing.
Cool. Who do you want to start?
Well, here we'll start to the right right now. So we'll just start with Harold. See what you got to say.
Yeah, so I thought it was super fun. I really enjoyed the whole exercise. It was a really interesting intellectual yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was really interesting from an intellectual perspective. Let me phrase it like that, because it was trying to I mean, I've been obviously on archaeological excavations before. It's been like 2 decades since I was a working archaeologist, so feeling the rust, you know what I mean? and then trying to remember stuff, but then trying to translate, like, okay, well, this is how I do it versus in the real world versus this is how I maybe would approach it in the game, and how do I translate what I would do in the real world to the game, trying to stay as close archaeologically as possible, but then it's not like I had like a daily field book, and like there's just things that don't necessarily translate, that I'm not gonna type out everything, and and it is a make-believe world, right? So it's like so it's like trying to span that. I found the editing more difficult, or not, maybe not more difficult. I found it different than what I normally do. Like normally a lot of how I film my regular episodes, totally a different kind of genre, and so editing and trying to structure it was vastly different than normal.
Okay.
I know I'm happy with how it turned out,
Mhm.
but it was just a different challenge even from that perspective.
Okay. What about you, Odo?
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. I thought it was a incredibly fun challenge to do. I do like the archaeology stuff that Mojang added in the game, with the trail ruins and stuff, and to be able to kind of see it from a you tired of me being behind the smoke?
Yeah, I can't see it.
Yeah.
I couldn't see it.
But yeah, to actually have that experience by somebody who placed it in a more realistic way, I thought it was incredibly fun. It was very challenging. Like, I kept looking at it. I kept trying to decide if I was to look at it from a quote real life perspective or an in-game perspective. And so my mind would keep like flip-flopping between the two. And of course, considering I got the lowest points in the game, mostly due to interpretation, it's because I was trying to put a more like real world aspect to things, and I wasn't even thinking that, well, we're actually in a game, so he's probably incorporating game mechanics into it with like the villager professions and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual like going through the process of excavating it and uncovering the artifacts was just, to me, that was thrilling. I absolutely loved it.
Okay. And you, Millie?
Yeah, I had a ton of fun with it, honestly. Like, I think I may have had a slight advantage because mine was like spawned right next to an actual village, so I think my mind immediately went to Minecraft villager stuff. But then again, I got these guys wrong. Like the big the chief's residence. I didn't even think about like tying in real life things into some of it, whereas the Minecraft stuff into the other parts. But that was kind of the fun part of the challenge too, was just having no idea where your brain was at, Daskalos, and like where you were kind of coming from when you created this. Like, I did a similar kind of like, I have ruins, I'm gonna recreate it in my own series, but like that was my brain, so having to come at it from a whole different aspect was a lot of fun.
Okay.
And it was challenging and it was hard, and I was very surprised I won like by a point or two, but like it was because of how hard it was.
Right. So, got a question from a subscriber here,
Mm-hmm.
from Richard, actually, as a matter of fact. What made determining whether or not there was a second floor such a challenge? And anyone can answer that. Well, it's a question for all three, but
I think
yeah,
for
good.
me it was because of the fact that there was like, it didn't seem like there was enough blocks in some of the
Yeah.
cases.
Uh-huh.
That's what it was for me too.
But-
And I honestly forgot about second floors in some of like when I was building. It wasn't until after I'd finished it going, should I put a second floor in?
That was more like what it was for me. Like it just didn't even dawn on me. Not until the very last room when I was doing the palace there, the residence, where that whole raw diorite thing was just throwing me for such a loop, and I finally was like, maybe that was the second floor, and that was the flooring for that. But it never dawned on me with any of these other buildings that there would have been a second floor, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, see,
And
I
it
was-
was
I
most
was-
frustrating for
sorry, go
that.
Yeah, I was thinking second floor in a number of them, but I was looking for patterns of like because I think Daskalos, you in a lot of ways clearly showed burn patterns for like where the charcoal was left behind. So I was looking for potentially like a line of charcoal that would represent like wooden stairs, or or a quantity of material that led me to believe that it was, a full second story. I even had stairs, I think in one of the builds going up to a roof. But I didn't put a second story because I collected the quantity of blocks, and I didn't think that would make up a whole second story
Yep.
of material. So that was, yeah. So honestly, but you just don't know really. I mean, like even I think in the real world, you're not necessarily always going to get it right if there's a second story or not. You look at archaeological excavations, and sometimes you can tell, and sometimes you just can't.
Yeah. And to be fair, my thought process with this was I collapsed everything sort of inwards on all of these buildings, and I tried to put, well, first off, I didn't put as many blocks inside the buildings as there were like in this current iteration. So I took away a lot of blocks because we don't always have the wall material. I mean, we usually have wall material, but we don't have all of the wall material usually.
Right.
And so with some of the second stories, I tried to leave just a little bit more, but it still would have only been about the same amount as a first story if all of it was left. So I could see where that would get a little muddy there for that. And actually, I plan on having a video coming out here real soon of showing me building the place and then tearing it down and then burying it at some point here soon.
I think another thing that threw me off with it was when I would find stuff like stairs and slabs. I was trying to decide, were these literally stair blocks that fell, or was this you trying to show like broken up, degraded whole blocks? You know,
Right.
so I didn't know where your mindset was with that. So I didn't know how to interpret those. So I kind of erred towards maybe they were just broken up solid blocks, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't even think of that at all. Like the fact that you guys considered that as a possibility, and I'm like, oh, the when they're broken down, they're gonna look like packed mud, and that was my only brain. That was the only thing I thought at that point.
Yeah, I think if I did it differently, I probably would have left stairs as stairs instead of like piled up bricks, and just kept the degraded bricks as just packed mud. If I did it again, that's totally what I would do, because I could see how that would throw everything off. Oda, because people are asking, how did we get these chairs done with the saddles? What is the data pack?
That is a data pack called, Millie, do you remember the name of it?
Oh goodness gracious!
Oh.
I am
Oh, well,
now
you
a
just got couch potato.
as well.
Let's see. I can find the name of it. I can find the name of it and answer that question in about a minute.
Okay, yeah, I want to say it's
Yeah.
something like better
like
chairs or easy chairs or something like
Just
that. Or
another chair mod or something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But
yeah,
basically,
we'll
they're
look.
yeah, they're saddles. This is effectively an invisible pig that we're riding. So yeah, it's because people have been asking.
Oh, it's just called chairs.
Oh, just called chairs. Oh,
Yeah,
And it's
just called chairs.
and it's a data pack, not a mod, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yep, it's a data pack called Chairs, and it's GM4 is, I guess, maybe the person who made it or some kind of initial there. So it's GM4 Chairs is the file name.
Okay.
And do you have to have that on the server, or do
Yeah.
you, or so it's a server side data pack,
Yep.
not a client side?
Yep,
Nope.
it's a server side thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a few questions here. If we were to do this again, what would you do differently? And we'll start off to the left this time.
Oh, what would I do differently? I would probably definitely do the archaeological thing that these two gentlemen did, and actually like grid off things, because I found like they're keeping things all nice and neat was like would have been so much better for me to be able to help rebuild things, and making sure that I kept the artifacts I found in the gravel in the exact spot where I found them, like you guys did. Like I screwed up there because I would have probably found the patterns that you did that I completely overlooked because I kind of just put them wherever.
Yeah, that whole glass, and just to kind of butt in maybe a little bit, or I'll shut up and let you continue talking. Yeah, but like that whole glass thing, that like I actually got that from someone on the Archeo SMP server. So that's one of the players on that server.
Yeah,
named
see, that was a
Moon.
brilliant idea.
And like when that first came out, Moon came up with that that concept, and so like that's how we've excavated stuff on that server, and so it works so great to just put down glass and then an item frame on top.
Yep.
I think my biggest problem was when we first started, the item frame thing was broken, and it was like if you popped off the item frame, the item would disappear. So I was kind of putting things where I knew I wouldn't have to break a block right away and lose that item. So
It's a
But I
funny
like the
story
glass.
about that too. Like the way that came about. I was on the server one day and I was doing something, I think with the ancient city, and then I logged off, and then Oda and I logged in to do one of the videos, and suddenly it was like not letting us take things off of item frames, and so I think we ended up screwing one of the maps up because one of the maps went to go pop off and it just disappeared, and it was just gone.
disappeared.
Yep.
Gone for oh no, it was when we were talking with Impala, when we were doing the whole
Doing one of the skits going
director,
into the
one of
office.
the skits
Yep.
things. Yeah, I put the note down for him to be gone or something like that, and then it just kept disappearing. Yeah, so it was really bizarre thing that it just
Was that the ethnography of the end miniseries?
that might have been
Is
the
that what it
ethnography.
was?
Yeah. It was me, you, and Oda there.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what about you, Oda? What would you do differently?
I think So I spent more time in the excavation, and I think I didn't spend enough time between the excavation and the reconstruction. So I kind of like I cleaned up what I was calling like debris a little too quickly, and I wasn't really considering like if I were to like say lift that debris up and move it to a wall, what would it look like? I think that kind of thing would have gotten me to like a lot of these window shapes and stuff. Whereas instead I just went and just cleaned up all the debris and put it in a box. And so I think a little bit more care in kind of that deconstructing the mess would have probably helped out quite a lot. Yeah, I think that was my biggest thing. That's what I would do differently.
Okay. Harold?
Yeah, for me, I think it wouldn't be. I think I was really satisfied with how I did the archaeology and the excavation, and a lot of the recreation decisions. I think the big thing for me that I would change is how I thought through the interpretation, because I didn't consider the archaeological excavation as an actual Minecraft village, or like I was thinking about Minecraft as a medium to do archaeology, not as a thing in itself in the world or attached to Minecraft lore.
Yep.
And so if I will, so it's like I thought it was in my opinion, like I didn't think at all what Millie did about like let me try and tie these to actual villagers, and their trades. I think I would have completely changed how I did some of the recreation based on that if I had considered that, and I would have changed how I did certainly the interpretation. I was thinking, okay, well, what led to the destruction of the site? Was it a burn layer? Was it a raid or an invasion? Was there internal strife and conflict? Was there was it an earthquake that led to a fire? Like I was thinking about it from those more meta perspectives, and like I wouldn't have, like there's nothing equivalent to like a warehouse in Minecraft, so like or a temple in Minecraft, or like I just I think tying it to those villagers, I think was honestly, like when we toured Millie's village and she explained out, like literally it's a light bulb moment for me. I was like, oh my goodness, I completely would have changed so much what I did. And so I was so happy that Millie won, because I think that's that to me is really what was the stroke of genius, and really brought Millie head and shoulders above how I, at least speaking for myself, how I interpreted it. So that's how I if I had to do it all over again, I would have wished in hindsight that I would have made that mental connection or tied it to Minecraft. And I think that would have completely changed what I did.
Yep. I agree with that 100%.
All right. So then this is sort of a follow-up question to that. So then if we did this again, not saying that we're going to, but if we did this again, what should I do differently? Anyone can take that one.
Okay, one thing. Come here. Follow me. You're all in creative, right?
Oh, okay.
All right.
Follow me.
Yes.
Fly over the wall.
Oop.
Okay. Now, one thing is the floor blocks. Most places around the get in the door. Here we go. Most places around the wall, at least the outside floors have dirt, but then sometimes there's a floor block where there's a wall, and sometimes it's just dirt. That threw me off big time with some of the layouts.
That's why I left that area open,
Right.
because there were those blocks below it.
Yep, and I made like a double door here because there were 2 floor blocks underneath what I was thinking was debris.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like the internal consistency of the world. Yeah. I mean, you can't expect an archaeological site to maybe follow internal consistency, but it's like, ultimately, yeah, it's like there was some stuff that like I kept tripping over myself in similar ways, where it's like, okay, there's dirt above, then there's a gravel layer, but then there's now dirt below. Do I interpret that as a feature? Do I interpret that as a infill? Do I interpret that as just like it's Minecraft? So like, like how many layers of dirt? Like, is there rooted dirt? Is there? I mean, because there's lots of different types of dirt blocks, and it wasn't clear to me how much I should read into that.
Well, these triple high walls threw me, like, because we had one instance of them being piled up over on one side, but
Right
the
over here.
rest of them were just very short and narrow, and that was one thing that threw me off. But I think maybe having some context from locale, because
Hmm.
in a
Oh.
real archaeological area, you would, a new site, you'd kind of have a little bit of context, maybe not, but you might have at least, well, I know I'm going to Greece, for example. I know what they used to do back then, like, so you'd have a little tiny bit of context. But, maybe not. Maybe you're digging out something in Mongolia that has never been found ever before, and maybe that's going to make a difference
But
too.
but
So,
but even then, you'd still have some sort of, well, typically some sort of context, depending on
yeah.
most of the age that you're dealing with. I mean, not maybe if you're
Hmm.
going like with a Neolithic site or something, but
Right.
there's multiple sites. Oftentimes, there's maybe like
Climate,
there's other civilizations
height,
that have
and yeah.
written. It's like maybe instead of the Huns, it'd be called the Shannu or whatever, But like you
Hmm.
would at least have some context to fit it in a wider world. So yeah, I
Okay.
mean, that said, I mean, I actually kind of, to a certain extent, like the fact that it was totally vanilla and you're just walking in, not so it
Yeah.
Hmm.
really was like you're going in virgin soil, like 17th century, antiquarian being like, I've never heard of this people before, like,
Uh,
Yeah.
but so from that perspective, it was refreshing so that you didn't have maybe
Yeah.
preconceived notions. But I leaned into that too much. I mean, some of my archaeological interpretations,
Yeah, because
I
I leaned into.
purposely threw out what I would have interpreted it like, because I was like, this is vanilla.
Hmm.
Don't trust your instincts. Like, you don't know what this people would have interpreted like, you know?
Yeah, and
Mhm.
I
yep.
immediately like clung to the villagers in Minecraft itself. So maybe I did have that advantage already in my own brain because I'm like, oh, this is Minecraft, so we're gonna do. Oh, this is what villagers used to do. Oh, they should have all these
Hmm.
blocks and stuff.
Yeah, one of my viewers just commented, kind of like
Yeah.
reiterating that. First of all, like knowing if it was quote Minecraft or Earth would have helped,
Yeah.
and also he
Mhm.
also pointed out more of the building debris to aid in possibly identifying those second stories.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I do have a question for you, Daskalos. Of the
Mhm.
blocks where we had the gravel that didn't have anything in it, were those all just the charcoal we were missing, or were there other blocks that were in those
Mm.
that we
So,
missed?
so based off of what I went and had to fill in for both Harold and Oda, and then also for you and a couple of them. Um, yeah, most I'd say about like 90% of them was charcoal because
Okay.
Awesome. Okay.
because a lot of them were charcoal for either things like these trees or these flowers. So like a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the charcoal that was in this area here that we're in were for the
Just represented
flowers. Mhm.
this. Okay.
Okay.
Or parts of the trees. And then a lot of the charcoal was for things like the beams or the
Mm-hmm.
roof.
Hmm.
But then I did have some of the suspicious gravel for things that I was trying to portray as a little bit more broken down. So, for example, I think I think the uh, grindstone was in suspicious gravel. But
Yep.
it was
Yep.
just a
Hmm.
slab, not the
Hmm.
actual,
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
table. So like things like that, I tried to do it a little bit more like, oh, this is more broken down.
Yep.
But some things I couldn't do that with, like for example, the glazed terracotta.
Hmm.
I couldn't do glazed terracotta broken down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, unless I wanted to do
Right.
regular terracotta.
Terracotta and dye.
Yeah, and then and
Yeah.
then you know,
Yeah.
yeah. And then the question would have been like, well, if that's broken down terracotta, then if this place burned, why isn't all terracotta glazed terracotta? Because that's how you make it in Minecraft. So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. Um,
I
and
mean,
just
you find tile in real situations, so it makes
yeah,
sense that the glazed
yeah.
terracotta was still whole.
And for the people watching and everything too, there was no like background lore to this village other
Hmm.
than sort of the village hierarchy or settlement hierarchy.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So there was no like, oh, this place was destroyed in whatever. I put the charcoal there because well, and Harold could probably back me up on this here. 9 times out of 10, when we find structures in the wild, the roofs at some point have burned.
Right.
Yeah.
because they're usually organic, and at some point they've burned. Whether it's because lightning hit nearby, there was a wildfire or something, or even the people themselves burned it before they left. Usually the roofs, the organics burn unless you have something in like a dry cave or something like that. So that's why I had that. There wasn't, and then of course once you have the roof gone and erosion takes place, everything sort of collapses in. And so that's kind of what I was basing it, this place off of. So the roofs would have burned, the walls would have collapsed in, and then dirt would have gravel and dirt would have eventually made it into the site. So I didn't have like a earthquake or
Right.
a Pompeii type disaster coming through. If I were to do this again, would I do something like that as well? With where I come up with a background story? Probably not, because that's just a little too much into it, and it might muddy the waters when it comes to rebuilding this.
Right.
I would think. So
I enjoyed all the viewers who actually wrote their own stories and background.
Yes.
things.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
I appreciate you all so much if you're watching this.
That was
Yeah.
so fun to read all of those different ideas and the different opinions. That was a lot of fun.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and the engagement, because they were watching all 3 of our videos as we went, and so where we did all of it, filmed it all, and then released. So like we didn't see any of our own stuff until we were completely done, and so so it was interesting to see how the different conclusions, because there was a lot of comments that I was like, oh man, if I would have at this point seen Oda or Millie's video, I would be coming to the same conclusions they are. Like that is, so it was, I thought that was really interesting from just a social experiment perspective.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was really pushing to have all of us finish up our episodes before we started popping them out, because I didn't want anyone to get commenters to get you to start changing your mind on things. So I do have a question from a couple subscribers. One is for Harald. It says, in the House of the Scholar, you didn't consider the mud brick walls as potentially a base for something organic that disappeared, but you did so for the market lights. So was there a reason why you treated them differently, or was it just a random weirdness?
Can you I'm not sure I followed that, or maybe I'm just not remembering what I did. So I remember the market, but the scholar part, like, can you reread that part?
In the House of the Scholar, you did not consider the mud brick walls as potentially a base for something organic that disappeared.
Oh, you mean like the mud brick on the floor?
I don't know. It just says mud brick walls.
It's this section over here.
Yeah, we can
Probably
go over
fly
there.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, this area right here, I think, is what they're talking about. And
Oh, yeah, because there
commenters,
was these
yeah.
3. There was like that one, and
Mhm.
didn't. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what to do with that, because there wasn't. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know that I have a good answer for that. Like I think in the marketplace, I thought it was there. A marketplace is going to need to be protected from sun and shade, right? So I was specifically looking for something organic above it, either something that had burned, which maybe meant more structure, or something of more flimsy wood, which maybe wouldn't have left as much archaeological trace. So I was specifically looking to reproduce stuff in the marketplace with lighter structure wood, right? So like wooden posts or fences or whatever. Where here, because so much of it was mud brick, both from a wall structure and even in some of the flooring, I was not looking to put organics in this area. I don't know that I answered that question at all, but that's at least what I was thinking about when I did it.
Millie being half hiding behind the wall is kind of creeping me out.
She just peering
so
around. Yeah.
another
I wasn't
question
even squatting or anything. I was just standing there.
Which is even more ominous. So question for MC Oda.
Sure.
How did working with me on projects in the past influence your thought process during this challenge?
That's an interesting question. So when working with the ancient city, I would kind of I knew how you would kind of see things and interpret things. Like, for example, this hole in the street. most likely there was a organic post here or something. But when I looked around your streets here, there were no patterns to that. And I'm like, maybe that's not what's going on. So I was looking for little things like that I had remembered you mentioning in the ancient city as indications of, you kind of recreating those similar ideas. Also, just working with you, I kind of, and watching, I've been watching your videos since you started with your ancient Greece series and everything. And I get a feel for your building style a little bit. I mean, not totally, but so I can get a little bit of a feel for what build style you might go or lean towards. Of course, some of that's completely
pointed out the
wrong.
flat roofs like right away when you were saying when you rebuilt it. I'm like, I'm just gonna leave it flat because that's how he was gonna build it probably.
Yeah, but not all of them are flat, right? So he's got some peaks on
Right.
some of them, but some of them are flat. Yeah, so
Yep.
so even then,
Yeah,
then knowing your build style doesn't really help 100%.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because I've watched Daskalos, a lot of your videos, but I haven't watched, I think, all of them, right? And I didn't specifically, while watching them, think about like, what's his build style, what's his palette choice, like, and I thought about before we really started, knowing we're going to do this, like, should I go back and watch those, thinking about that, knowing that I should look for clues, and I purposefully was like, no, I'm going to go in blind.
Yep.
Purposefully not trying to pre-prepare because it's all about the experience. I'm not going in trying to win or game the it's like I specifically like didn't look at that, and throughout the process I was like, man, I would be doing better if I did.
Well, one example is like I noticed that at least in your earlier stuff, when you would build much more like this, right? Like the road are stone bricks, so they're all stone bricks, right? This wall is mud bricks, they're all mud bricks. You don't do a lot of that like texturing in different blocks and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's funny because like that was part of my internal rationalization for the packed mud was broken down bricks, because I was like, well, Daskalos probably built them all in one block. And then I go look at your current series, and there's your wall with your mud bricks mixed in with packed mud. And I'm like, dang it.
Oh man, I went back and forth on that so much, and I was like, I could think of this stuff as collapsed or degraded. I'm like, but in a normal Minecraft style, you're going to use like a varied palette type, and then you're going to break up the monotony of the same block. So I actually specifically interpreted it like I did, and not tried to choose mud brick versus because I was like, well, this is more the Minecraft style, is to use a varied brick, a varied palette. And so I specifically didn't do it like this because of that.
Yeah, I sort of I figured if this were in use that they wouldn't texture their walls. They would all be, mud brick over this, or, the road would be, all brick or whatever. So that's why I did it this way. If I were to build this in like one of my worlds, I'd probably texture, because, that's what you do. So yeah. And then
it's also good we didn't get graded on that portion. So
yeah, no,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I didn't. I specifically did not want to grade on that. And so okay, so here's a couple other questions. Let's see here. Is there anything you felt surprised by, either something someone else did interpreted differently in that, oh wow, I never thought of it that way, how cool, or something, now that you've seen the original, that feels like something you totally should have thought of but didn't?
this tax collector thing, like that whole idea of having a main city center to collect tax, I thought of that later. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes just as much sense as any church or religious thing would have, especially with the way it was set up in the books and everything. Yeah, that was one of the ones that I'm like, dang it, if I thought of it a little bit longer. And the chieftain's house too, for me, like I should have figured that out.
My biggest thing goes back to the beginning of our discussion, is the not realizing that these were villager homes with, their professions were the actual workbenches in them. That totally went so far over my head. Oh my gosh. And so I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, these are stables because this is an inn and a tavern, and those cauldrons are probably like sink basins, and So I'm,
Mhm.
you know, that's where my mind is going, and I'm not sitting there thinking like, well, yeah, they're leather workers, and of course these stalls are
Right.
for their cows, you know, like.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So-
I had the exact same thing as Oda. Like that would be my number one. But the other one was this meeting place. Like I don't from a specific like I can't, you know, even when I'm thinking about a Minecraft village now, I think like, well, there's always like a, you know, there's a fountain in most, you know, and there's a bell, you know, and there's a well by the bell.
Yeah.
Like even if I
Yeah.
interpreted this as even if I had made that mental leap and interpreted it like Millie did as a Minecraft village which trades, I would still be looking for that. I would not be in any way ever thinking about a meeting place. Like that's not like
I
Mhm.
think if it had had the bell, it would have probably rung the bell in your head.
It's funny because I actually thought about putting a bell in here, but I couldn't figure out the best place to put it. I thought, oh, I could put it on one of these pillars here, but then
Mhm.
it would be all weird, and I thought I can't really put it in the middle unless I hang it.
Mhm.
But then it's just sitting there in the smoke, and
Yeah.
I'll just leave it out.
It
They'll
would have been
figure
those
it out.
one of those suspicious gravel kind of finds, I think.
Yeah.
Like it would have
Yeah.
if you'd wanted to do that. But then again, like it's still not exactly like a village. Like it's not a fountain or a
Right.
or a well or anything like that either. So
Mhm. So there's a question actually that was posed to me, which was to you, how important was the scientific approach / method used during the excavation and your appreciation of all 3 dig sites? And they're asking because Oda went through the massive hassle of creating a grid made of copper rods, but Millie went straight to digging. So I don't think a lot of people know sort of how that first episode really went, because I only put it in there for a few like seconds or even maybe a couple minutes, but
Mhm.
I did spy for quite a long time to sort of see how everyone was tackling it in the beginning. And in fact, and Harold's setup, you could see one of his maps. There's another arrow with him, so like it totally ratted me out.
Yeah.
The map did. So and the first thing I noticed was Millie was just like a printer, just like taking off the entire layer.
yep.
And so which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Because you
Well,
can
it's a game
you can,
too, right? I
it's a
mean,
game, yeah, right. And so
Oh yeah, and I was going at it from not from any archaeological like what would have happened in Minecraft for me to discover this. Like
Mhm.
I would have been just like leveling out the area and then what are these blocks? These don't belong here.
Right. Yeah, so and to be fair, I didn't really put anything into this settlement that would require you to grid it out in the very beginning.
Mhm.
And you could actually approach this from oh, I don't know if you've ever done this, Harold, or if it's just weird stuff that they do in the American Southwest. But sometimes what we would do is if you found like a wall, you no longer had like a 1x1 grid or a 1x2 grid around the wall. Suddenly the wall was its own unit. And you would sort of come down on the entirety of the wall, and you would what we call chase the edges out to the ends of the wall, and then that would become all one unit, while everyone else still had their little 1x2s or 1x1s.
Yeah.
And so to be fair, Millie's approach to it with the way that this was set up was equally as valid as Oda's or Harold's. But I did of course expect Harold to be doing much more in the way of gridding, just like how we do in the real world. But there was nothing that really would have necessitated the gridding until you got to the actual buildings. And even then, you could have easily just assigned loci to each one of these buildings,
Right.
and then just done that.
just done building by building. Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
So-
you could have easily done that.
So for me, the only reason why I did the gridding was because I saw you do that in the trail ruins.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, this is
And-
what you're supposed to do, right? And even in my video, I was like, is this the way an archaeologist would do it? I have no clue, but it looks cool,
Yeah.
you know?
And it's true. That's how we would have done it. We would have gridded the whole thing out, and then Granted, we probably would have done something a little more like what Harold did, which is done some random sampling of units, taking them down to see where we're at, and then from there sort of get a better game plan. But for this challenge, there wasn't really anything that necessitated the need for that. So to answer the question that was asked, it wasn't necessarily needed. Did I appreciate it? Yeah, sure, I appreciated it. But I could also see how the different techniques that went about it to uncover this whole thing had their ups and downs. Had their pros and cons. Because if Oda had not done the the lightning rod thing, it wouldn't have shown up on the map. But that's not necessarily true either, because Harold did the gridding, and it showed up on the map because he left the bulks.
Because he left the
Right.
bulks in, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if I was digging out a real site, like I probably wouldn't have had bulks, right? Like that's not. I mean, people typically don't do that much today, right?
Right,
But it's
right.
But I specifically, when I was thinking about how do I want to excavate this, like if I was just playing Minecraft and digging out of trail ruins and not making an educational video about it, I would just do what Millie does, just like I would just I would just dig it out, right? But like, I knew going into this, I was like, what I'm bringing to the table is a history of an archaeological method and that experience. So like, I knew going into it, I was going to be taking an archaeological approach as accurately as I feel I can in Minecraft. And so even though in the real world I wouldn't be using bulks, like I thought visually that would make a lot of sense in Minecraft and actually work well, both from a thumbnail perspective, but also from a, even if someone else did a grid, they wouldn't be doing a grid like that, And so, and then I could talk about how stratigraphy works, because one of the nice things about a bulk is you can just visually see it. And so I thought it worked real well for the exercise. So that was really why I took that approach.
Yeah, and just from a Minecraft watching your video perspective, that was very aesthetically pleasing. I really liked seeing it with those bulks up, with everything else excavated down. That was a really cool visual.
Yeah, it looked really good.
All right. Okay, so here's a good one, good roundtable question. What do you think that you did well that you think may have been either overlooked or not appreciated as much as you think should have been?
I will answer this with one thing, which it turns out was actually completely and utterly wrong. But I assumed that these acacias were here because they were being used as some kind of building material. So I did integrate them as a building material in two of the buildings. I thought I was being really, really clever with that. But it turns out it wasn't building material in anything, so I'm guessing they were just decorative. But I thought I was like, man, I'm going to nail this and no one's going to get it. This is going to be so awesome.
Well, to be fair, no one else did do that. So,
That's right. Yeah, that's true.
So you were right.
Tree in there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But to actually use it as a building material in some of the builds, that's what I was that's what I thought. I like, oh man, I found the secret thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I'll know what I thought I was going to be clever on was the brick kilns, and it was just a staircase.
Oh yes.
But, like I had a few people says, yeah, that looks like what it would be, and I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking about like when you do find old kilns and how they're at. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, but it was stairs.
Yep. Well, one of my commenters right now on the stream actually said that he actually prefers that interpretation over the stairs.
Yeah. Like I would have probably put in, if I'd put in a second story, I probably would have put it out back or something, because it would have just made sense for them to have had a place to be able to create those bricks.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know that I have I think that I did really well on my marketplace, like from both an aesthetic, but also from like a design perspective. Actually, I personally like the looks of mine better than yours, to be honest.
Oh no, I did too. The carpet top actually looked really good. Yours.
I also, but like I there was a part of that was like that wasn't appreciated. I actually think that you guys appreciated it a lot. So I think that part of it doesn't make sense. I think that's the thing that I'm most proud of, maybe, but that's not maybe what wasn't appreciated. The I think what wasn't appreciated was I thought that I was closer on the whole what I was calling the temple complex and tying in, those, some of the things you see in the real world in what is a temple complex, to what I was seeing in some of the surrounding areas, from like like those priests in a temple complex are going to have to live somewhere, right? And
Yep.
and looking at it as a class-based system, right, where I think it was pretty clear that here, at least in my map, I don't know what direction south is here, but in mine, south was clearly a lower class, and then you're moving into like a mid-range middle class, more towards upper class trades, and then like moving into a really higher end class, scholars, priests would be a much higher class, seeing those, so I think like in that interpretation, like that was pretty clear. And so that's frankly why I called this an altar, not a meeting place. And I thought that was pretty clever, because it was tying is, in a real archaeological site, the common folk are not going to be let in the high temple, but
Right.
Yeah.
and so there's often, at least I'm making a generalization, there's often some sort of ritual area where the common people or lower class people could go that isn't the temple. And so like so it wasn't that like I was like, oh man, like I wasn't appreciated by the by it not being interpreted that way, but like I thought that like that interpretation actually matched the evidence, I thought, pretty well, like how I interpreted what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So then, what was something that someone else did do well that really impressed you?
I'm gonna go with the roofs over some of these buildings that Harold did. I'm like, I
Yes, the
absolutely
cross
loved.
beams on these guys, and
Yep, and then using this
that
kind of
he had in his.
these trapdoor roofs in some
Yep.
of these builds that he did just looked outstanding. In fact, I'm stealing those build ideas.
For me, it was Oda in this. He had that lattice work of the stairs, so that like I thought that was brilliant. I mean, I think for a similar way that you're kind of calling out some of my roofs, where it like kind of let light shine through, and it would have been great for airflow,
Yep.
but yet created like a place that clearly was a demarcated zone between whereas more of a customer or a workshop area and maybe an internal person's house and domestic area. I thought that having that lattice work was brilliant. And then for me, Millie's tying it into the trades, I think was the big thing that impressed me there.
Yeah.
It was the interpretation. And then I think I liked Millie's what is it, the mosaic ceiling the best.
Oh
potentially.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we all got it very close though. Like that was a surprise, but it was a pleasant one because
Yeah. You guys all got the radiating thing in this
Yeah.
in that mosaic tile.
I think I liked Oda's. I liked Oda's. Obviously his meeting place he got down, and then the chieftain's house too. Like
Yes.
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah, that ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I kept considering with the ceiling, I didn't end up doing anything with it, but like, was it a dome? I kept looking for ways to see
Oh.
whether or not I can add verticality to it, so it's not a flat ceiling, but like, was there a way to like each go around it created one step in, and then so it would be maybe much higher.
Right. Kind of like what I did with the Tholos tomb at Pylos. I did that where I used all the glazed terracotta to make the inside.
And frankly, if I would have seen these what deep slates, not just the deep slate slabs, but the deep slate, like if they were stairs, the tiled stairs, I absolutely would have done that, because I would have thought that was the roofing material then above the mosaic ceiling.
Oh yeah.
Because with just slabs, you would have seen half the block sticking up all the time.
Oh yeah, good point.
Like from the from the top, from the outside.
Oh yeah, that would have been cool.
All right. Well, I'm gonna open it up to any of the the subscribers watching for any questions. Oda, you got any of your subscribers asking questions at all?
Yeah, one person asked, "How did you?" Let me word this correctly. This is kind of funny.
It's a funny one. Read it right.
Let's see. How did this place avoid the in-chickening that happened to the ancient city?
Oh man, yeah, yeah.
Hold on, we can fix that. Hold on.
That's true. That's true. We can start throwing chickens all over the place. Yeah, I honestly don't know. With the ancient city, it's weird because I think the reason why we have so many chickens in there is because when we removed the chunks above the ancient city, I think there were chickens that just sort of wandered in and fell into the hole. That's what I think is happening. The weird thing that's happening with the ancient city is that we've gone through probably like 5 iterations of a chicken named the Warden.
Yes.
And every single one of them have disappeared.
Yeah.
Have either I don't know where they went. They're just gone. And so for a while there, I had a chicken named the Warden, tied to a fence post outside of the base camp with a sign saying "Experiment, do not touch," because I wanted to see if for some reason they would like despawn or something, because I couldn't figure it out. I have no idea where those other Warden chickens went.
Oh man, if I would have, that would have been an awesome prank. I would have like secretly been joining the server just to prank you guys. I didn't, just for the record, but
Well, and then we had a bit of a issue with this when this episode hasn't come out yet, but we do a museum portion inside of the ancient city, and there was a bit of an issue because I was the one pasting it in with Lightmatica, and I'd never done that before, and my mouse is overly sensitive. And I turned my head at one point and accidentally clicked, and it shifted the build over, which then started doing stuff all over the place. So anyways, we panicked. Well, I panicked. I panicked. Oda didn't really panic,
I was panicking inside, too.
Oh, okay. But so we had to like repaste parts of the ancient city in, and because there were chickens in there and we were repasting it back in, we had this explosion of chicken population. I think I must have killed a dozen of them after we fixed the whole thing.
Yep.
And we were still finding them. I'm still finding them. I think I killed the last one. So there's only Shrieker and Warden wandering around. But yeah, that was insane. And since we have the top on now, there are no more chickens that have just wandered in.
That's right.
But they do. It's interesting to see how far they go, because they wander like crazy, and you'll see, Shrieker in one corner, and then you'll be doing something on the other side of the city. And then you'll turn around, and there it is, looking up at you, and it pops out an egg, and you're like, "What are you doing all the way over here? How did you get here?"
Mobs naturally like go towards the player, and if you have those chunks loaded, they will kind of just gravitate towards you.
It's crazy, yeah, totally crazy. All right, so I think that's all the questions that I have.
I have one for you actually. So
okay, yeah.
You saw all 3 of our builds. Like, were there things that you were expecting us to either do or not do, or something that like surprised you, either in a positive or a negative way, like that you were either like, like, oh wow, that's, I'm excited about that, or like, oh man, like, like that's I expected this but didn't see it,
Right. I will say that generally speaking, that all of you did really well in ways that I did not expect. And a lot of you took interpretations in ways that I didn't expect either. And so I would say that I was surprised at how both Millie and Harold missed the meeting place interpretation. I figured that was like a slam dunk. I'm like, they'll figure this one out easy. And then when I saw them, I was like, how did this happen?
And we did it virtually the same way too.
Yeah, and it was almost
Yeah.
exactly the same.
It's like I kind of thought it was a place to meet, but I didn't like seating wise. I was like,
Right.
nah, there's bricks under, and that harkens back to what Oda's little pet peeve was.
Yeah.
Is like there was
The floor
actually
blocks.
underneath it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
and at
Yeah.
that point, I'm like, well, it must have been a higher up then,
Yeah.
Yep.
not moved in chairs. Like,
You're right. Yeah. The other thing that I thought was weird that I figured everyone would get was that furnace.
Oh my
I
god,
figured
the
It's
furnace.
gonna
that
haunt me
furnace-
forever.
Yeah, I figured that furnace being up like that would have been a dead giveaway that it came from a second story. And so when we started walking through and I was seeing how much that furnace gave everyone a headache, I was like, okay, yep, not going to do that again, because that obviously threw people for a loop. It's funny because like going through and grading the interpretations and then watching your videos when you were going through the thought process, there were multiple times watching the thought process where a lot of you, actually all three of you, had your first impression spot on with what I was trying to do, but then you started second guessing.
Yeah.
And then when you started second guessing, you started changing things. So like Oda originally had the lower class housing with the bamboo roofs.
Mhm.
And then he tore them all down and put the spruce roofs up, which cost him a point in the grading. Had you left him there, it would have been Millie in first and Harald and Oda tied for second.
Yeah.
And so like it was, and and I saw that a couple times in several videos where I was like, oh, you were so close. Why did you do that? And so so yeah, it was interesting because when I graded, I'm like, okay, yeah, a lot of this makes sense. A lot of what you're interpreting makes sense, because I asked you to explain it a lot of times. I'd say, well, tell me what this is, and how you come to it. And yeah, and a lot of times your explanations made sense, even though that's totally not what was going on.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I think the second story issue I think surprised me the most. I figured you guys would have got that
Yeah.
with just the amount of material being different in those areas, even though it wasn't that much more. I figured like, oh, they're gonna get this because we've already established that single stories only have like one or two blocks, and then here we've got like three stacked up. I figured that would have been a slam dunk, but I realized that no, that was
No,
not a
and the
slam dunk.
verticality, like if I had verticality in my mind, I would have maybe have gotten the reason for these two pillars, like being and I could not wrap my head around why there was only two.
Yes.
And it makes so much sense looking at it now, but like at the time it was just like, what? Why did he make it uneven? Was there something else there between those pillars? Like not a roof or a second story.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny about this is when I was coming up with this idea, the thing that I did not want to do is put 4 pillars in here, because 4 pillars, a throne, and a big square or rectangular room screams Megaron. And if you've watched my videos, you would have been like, oh, this is a Megaron.
Right.
Yep.
And so I was like, do not do that.
And that's exactly
So-
what I did in mine. And during our walkthrough, you put the little fireplace in the
Yeah.
middle. It was like
My
Megaron.
headlights, Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, okay, I have to make this more, different enough from a Megaron so that while they're building it or while they're looking at it, they're like, okay, this almost looks like a Megaron, but it's definitely not. And then then seeing Oda's thing, I was like, well, okay, I obviously didn't make it different enough, from a Megaron, for it to stick. I will say though, what's interesting is I went back and I was looking at my teardown of this, because like I said, I'm doing the video on the build up and teardown, and I didn't realize it at the time, but these windows on this wall here, they are in that shape in the teardown.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so
I saw the calcite bit is out in this courtyard, and for some reason I didn't rebuild it quite like that.
Yeah.
But I've
So
seen it.
I think it's like missing like the top two calcite, but it's this shape
Hmm.
on both sides
Cool.
evenly. And I think I did that on purpose. I don't really remember if I did that on purpose or not. But I figured there's no way that they're gonna get these windows correct. And of course you didn't. But
Right.
I wouldn't expect anyone to get these correct at all. Um, yeah, it's interesting stuff. There was a lot of things that I was like, oh, this is going to be a slam dunk for them, and then it wasn't. And then there were some things where I'm like, oh, this is going to be real difficult for them to figure out. Only Harold's going to be able to figure this out because I'm coming at this with an archaeological mindset. And then nobody got it. And I was like, well, okay, I'm obviously making this too difficult. I will say that if I did this again, I would absolutely give you guys a little bit of background because I was thinking about that while I was grading. I was like, had I told them that this is to imagine this in the world of Minecraft, that they would do it completely differently.
Hmm.
And I think if I were to do it again, that's what I would totally do. I'd say like, look, imagine this as a vanilla structure or something that you could imagine being in the Minecraft world rather than just sort of being like, here you go, here's your spot, it's within 100 blocks of where I've spawned you.
Mhm.
And then let you go, though it would have been sneaky for me to put like a couple like sunken ships in Harold's Harbor to see if he caught it, but
Oh, I did. I went around it. I looked
yeah,
for it. I mean,
yeah,
and
You
that's
would have
it.
been all set if you had been in mine, because there was a sunken ship not too far away from mine.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
You're like,
I definitely would have been looking for that. Yeah, and that was the other thing in hindsight. Like I tried to look at the surrounding area, think about the place in a wider,
Mhm.
like trade structure. Is there roads leading off? Like, is there tried to think about it in the wider world? But
hmm
in hindsight, like, it's not like everyone had a duplicate of my terrain, and it probably would have
Mhm.
been too difficult for Daskalos to have found three locations that were close enough for that context
Mm.
to have actually worked. Like even if he found something on a coast, like to find exactly that terrain or that, like, so I think some of the context I tried to look in the surrounding area was a little bit wasted if I would have scoped it out more realistically from a practical perspective.
right, yeah. There was at one point I had been thinking about putting a river through the middle of town.
Hmm.
And then when I thought about how I was going to do that when I pasted it into this world, I thought there's no way I'm going to be able
That
to
would have been
find
so much
three
like
spots.
terrain work that you then
Yeah.
terraforming you would have had to
Oh
do.
Oh
yeah.
gosh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was a dumb idea. Well, I mean, it was a cool idea, but it was ultimately a dumb idea too, because it would have taken me hours to figure it out. I mean, it was hard enough to find three spots that were relatively flat, relatively open, and far enough away to where there was no way that you were going to accidentally run into each other. Um, and then to find, and I was looking for flat spots that were near villages. But your two, Harold's and Oda's spots that I found, I was like, well, these are too easy. These are too good of a spot to
Yeah.
sleep on. Um, but yeah, and if you think about it, right, the trail ruins in Minecraft, they have this road that runs through the middle, but
Yep.
none of them are linked to anything else.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And so it'd be real hard to do that, but it would be kind of neat to do that sort of in a meta way.
Yeah.
I did appreciate that you built your ruins as a hill or a tell, as
Mhm.
opposed to what Minecraft did, which has actually always
Mhm.
bothered me about their
Mm.
trail ruins. Is they're
Yeah.
like, 12 meters underground, which is
Yeah.
not like
Right.
short of like a volcanic event where like, or
Mhm.
like a silting of a coastline or
Yeah.
redirecting of a river. You're in that I don't know how realistic that is from a real world. So I appreciated that. I mean, not just from like a how many blocks do we have to shift perspective, but
Mhm.
yeah, I thought it was more realistic how you did it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's one thing I wanted to do with this was to make it all, just subsurface and
Mhm.
not from the top down, the top being the surface that you're walking on. Yeah, because I've been asked that a lot of times in my trail ruins video is, oh, well, how old would this be based on how deep it's buried? And it's like, well, first off, it doesn't work that way in the real world. But secondly, you wouldn't find this like this. And
No.
there's been other follow-up questions where, how realistic is this? Would you find something like this? And the only thing I can think of is Petra, but Petra is built in a canyon.
Hmm.
So so even though it has like this crazy amount of material above it, it's because it's in a canyon that they were able to do that. It wasn't just like, they buried it,
Right.
Right.
So
Yeah, unfortunately, you have to think of it from an actual game development point
Right.
of view. Like, that's
Yeah.
the easiest way to make that happen without having things really get destroyed by the terrain.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Now the
So-
one thing that I would have interpreted in hindsight differently, it would have been wrong if I did it. But like after I did the build and everything, and while I was editing the videos, I was thinking to myself, oh, I should have interpreted it like this. I'm glad I didn't, obviously, because it would have been wrong. But like, this is all warped wood, right? And you gave us this awesome clue of this door, right? Which I think
Yep.
we all cued into, and that's why. But
Yep.
like, that comes from the Nether, right? There was also Soul Stand, which comes from the Nether,
Mhm.
and I was thinking, well, okay, so clearly these people went to the Nether. This site has no Nether portal,
Mhm.
and in hindsight, as I was editing, I was like, oh, maybe there should be a Nether portal in one of these rooms over here, because I was interpreting it as a temple
Oh
complex.
yeah.
There
Mhm.
maybe should have been, or in
Oh,
this
yeah.
area for me at least was like a big window, right? Like looked out over the garden. Maybe there should have been a Nether portal in that window, and then because the obsidian was maybe so precious, there's just none left. And so yeah, so I mean, in hindsight, I was like, oh, I should have had another portal in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to be fair, I didn't even think about the nether materials, where they came from or anything like that, and putting that in with the building. And if you were to, the popular saying, the whole gun to your head, what do you say? If somebody came to me and said, well, where did all this nether stuff come from? I'd just say, well, there's ruined nether portals all over the place. Those are obviously old.
Yeah.
So that's
Also,
probably where it came
where
from.
did the villagers get all of their brewing stuff anyway?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you got to assume they've had it somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember
exactly.
in the comments to my videos, there were several people who had brought up maybe that's another portal room, that kind of stuff, and especially like the two pillars in the building
Right.
next door. Maybe there was another portal there. So I think a lot of the viewers were actually keying into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That would be a fun challenge, like coming at it from even more of a Minecraft world and kind of like built-in lore perspective than even this. Like, this is still grounded in real life to the point of there being classes where there's not really classes except for a nitwit, I guess, in Minecraft. But like otherwise, I mean, they're not really classed out too much. And like in this, they all have the same size houses except for, a couple of bigger ones. But that would be an interesting way to do it too. Like, you could either come at this challenge a whole different bunch of ways, like straight, like completely fantasy directly into Minecraft, something that's not even based in Minecraft, or something completely based in our world reality.
Right. Yeah.
So I got an interesting question from one of the folks in my chat. So this might be a slightly different question for different people here, but it says, let's see, I'm curious what type of structures tend to be the biggest headache. So I asked, do you mean for Daskalos to create or for us to build or interpret? She said, either really. I've been involved in some IRL excavations, so I'm nosy. so maybe from a professional aspect, Daskalos and Harald, like in the real world, maybe what types of structures give you the biggest headache? And then also maybe if you want to say something about this particular experience, what kind of thing gave you the biggest headache? What structures?
Is the question asking about excavation or like recreating? Because I've never done like a recreation of an existing site in the real world.
She said either really. So just kind of interpret that how you will.
But she said she's been involved in some IRL excavation, so she's nosy about it.
I guess one thing I'll maybe I'll just start. So for me, it was the building next door where it was the which I think all of us probably assumed it was some kind of a temple, some kind of a spiritual worship place. Where it wasn't, it was more of like a king and the head administrator, and I think that
Tax
there's
records.
probably, my assumption is that a lot of maybe archaeologists or people in that field tend to lead towards, oh well, this has to have been used for worship, and I'm wondering how often that interpretation comes out where maybe that wasn't necessarily the case. And of course, there was, I think, Daskalos, I talked to you about this before, that book called, what was it, Motel of Mysteries?
Yep.
There
I
was
love that
even
book.
there was even a part in that book. I haven't read through it yet, but this was just something that an anthropology teacher back in college mentioned. There's a whole part in there about talking about like this porcelain idol, and then there was like neckwear, this fancy neckwear, so people would kneel down to this and worship there. And of course, they're describing a broken toilet in a hotel room.
Right.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's funny because we often joke about how archaeologists just throw the word ritual around, and they do that because they don't know, right? It's sort of the placeholder for I don't know, but it's a little more complicated than that. And so it's a joke. We joke about it, but the truth of the matter is that ritual in archaeological terms is different than ritual used in everyday speech, right? So everyday speech, when we talk about ritual, or if you talk about someone's ritual or whatever, a lot of times it takes, maybe not someone's ritual, but when you talk about something having a ritual aspect to it, you're talking about religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the archaeology world, that's not really what it means. Ritual is something that you do regularly, a very specific way, and if you don't do it, you feel weird. So like, for example, there are plenty of times where you've probably gone to school or work and realized that you didn't put deodorant on that day. And then you notice it once you're there at work or school, and it makes it even worse because now you always smell it, and you're kind of whatever.
Yep.
Or like maybe you forgot to brush your teeth this morning or whatever, and it bugs you for the rest of the day until you can actually do it. And so that's the ritual that we talk about in regards to archaeology. So when an archaeologist can't figure something out, they slap that ritual tag onto it. To signify like, hey, this probably, because we can't figure it out because we don't know exactly what's going on here, it probably had some sort of ritual aspect to it, and that ritual is the archaeological ritual, not the sort of everyday speech ritual. So it's more of a daily practice or like a regular practice type thing. Now, religion gets thrown around a lot. Specifically because religion, the way we think about religion nowadays is so different than the way it was thought of before. Before, it was a daily part of life. It was reality. There wasn't a question on about whether a religion was real or not, or more real than another one, or something like that. No, it was a fact of life that a god or gods were in charge, and you had to either appease them or you had to do certain things in order to sort of be in their good graces. That was reality for ancient people, a lot of ancient people. And so when we talk about religion in archaeology, that's usually what we're talking about, because again, it's something that was daily, and we see evidence of that, whether it's written evidence, whether it's objects that have some sort of spiritual meaning to them that we can discern rather than just attach to it. But you do get people that tend to lean into that a little too heavily, and they don't have the evidence really to back that up. They're just saying that because it makes sense to them, and yeah, it's complicated. It's one of those complicated things that just sort of, you just got to sort of navigate in the archaeology world. I don't know. What do What do you
No,
got?
I think I completely agree with kind of what you're saying. I mean, there's always a pros and cons to it. I mean, it's a trope, I think, to a certain extent for a reason. It's like when in doubt, it's ceremonial, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I also think there is some truth to that to an extent. Like, I think that your example, Oda, about the, that talking about like how would archaeologists, interpret a toilet today? I mean, I think to a certain extent, in future archaeologists just like today, like they would be taking, samples and they would be like, oh, well, there's, fecal matter. And you know what I mean? Like so
Right,
they
yeah.
would come to a different conclusion. But it's like, I mean, I think about, again, yeah, I don't know, maybe this is more of an international audience or not, but it's like, you know, how would archaeologists determine, interpret flags today?
Hmm.
We see flags, I was walking by a ford the other day, while walking my dog, and I was like, what is that decal on the side? And it was like literally not even just like it was an American flag, like decaled in into the trim of the car,
Huh.
And so it's like, would we interpret, that as religion, or as a tribe, or, as archaeologists 2,000 years from now, like they don't know, or maybe so it's like
Mhm.
some of that stuff. It's like, how do people, in groups, out groups, social status, like how would that be interpreted? And, I mean, I think they'd be wrong to interpret it as a religion, but I think that there's aspects of like, how do you group together as a tribe that, maybe in a ritual or a ceremonial way would be, would
Mm-hmm.
be potentially appropriate if viewed from a certain point of view,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about it from a bigger perspective, not like a, religion big R, but like religion small r,
Mhm.
perspective.
Yep.
It's like, how many people you'd walk into their house and maybe they have a cross somewhere, with,
Yep.
it doesn't mean they're religious from a big R perspective, maybe
Mm-hmm.
they are, but maybe they're not, maybe
Right.
it's more
Yep.
cultural. Like,
Mhm.
my family is, or whatever, someone who grew up Catholic, and I don't want to, this isn't the political or whatever, but like,
Sure, sure, sure.
but it's like from when you think about that stuff from like a ritual or a ceremonial or an in-group or a, how do I, you know, the people I correspond with in life, well, yeah, we're, you know, I don't know how many people buy and have Amazon boxes in their house. Well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
how would that be interpreted?
That must be a
Yeah.
religion, right?
Oh my gosh, could you
You
imagine
know,
if those things stayed around?
It's like
right?
it's like one unifying
Or
global
logos or
religion.
whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely.
oh, this is my sports team. So clearly that's a, and to go back archaeologically, there was big groups of people that like in ancient Rome or in, classical Rome or even in the Byzantine Empire that corresponded to the blues or the greens or the, and that was their sports team. And
Yep.
Mhm.
and there was riots even, one sports team against another.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, my all of my extended family is from Pittsburgh, and if Pittsburgh was excavated, then definitely Steelers and Pirates would have been the
exactly.
prominent religion for the area.
Yep.
Oh yeah, and then like think about how many people have tattoos. You know what I mean? That
Mhm.
correspond to that stuff.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
I got an interesting question here for Daskalos. I don't know how you would do this in game, but is this something that you considered? So the question is, did you ever consider letting us, quote, perform tests or analysis on collected materials for another layer of interpretation? Examples, sifting collected dirt, carbon dating, chemical analysis. Again, I don't know how you would do that in game, but did you consider any kind of deeper level of investigation?
So surprisingly, I did consider something
Oh,
like that, and I'll show you where.
oh, cool. Oops, wrong buttons.
There was one place specifically that I thought I should give them some more clues, or at least have like, you know, have them send something off for lab work, and that's here. Um, because there was a lot of stuff that you can interpret in different ways. So, for
Mhm.
example, Harold interpreted this not as a butchery, but kind of as a butchery, but with live animals here, right?
Oh,
Whereas
Yeah.
that's not how I have it here. I have it here as selling meat products and cooked meats. Um, and then like over here, you guys all got this as sort of like food production, but then what would be the difference between the food production and that meat vendor? So I had actually thought about like, okay, should I say, you can send off, 15, 10 items or whatever to get analyzed or whatever, to for you to figure out.
Hmm.
And in which case where I would like give you a little bit better of a clue, but it just to me it just seemed a little too much, right? To do.
Out of the spirit of the
Uh,
exercise, you think?
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and so that's why I put like, I think for this one I put a glass pane to be a bottle,
Yeah.
to get the honey, because this was going to be just like a bee products
Mm-hmm.
type area, and then I just put some candles here or whatever, to sort of like show like, hey, this is what's going on here. They're doing stuff with wax. And then that's why I also put slabs here, because you build the barrels with slabs. And I figured that was a good enough hint. But obviously, like as some of you interpreted this as them selling slabs,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, okay, that was that was a dumb move on my part. I probably should have put like a barrel or two in here, to sort of hint at that rather than
Mm-hmm.
a barrel and a bone or something like that, to hint that that's what's going on here. So yeah, I had thought about doing something like that where it was like, oh yeah, you can analyze, X number of objects, but it just ended up being too much for this project. Um, and I don't know if I would do that again in the future if we were to do this again. I don't know if I would do that. I think if anything, if we were to do something similar to that, it would be like, oh, you're allowed 3 questions in
Hmm.
certain area, in areas. So like, you could say something like, for here, you could be like, I'm finding charcoal. Is it the roof or is it something in the stall? And I would be like, oh, it's the roof, and then you could, oh, okay, there we go. Because in the real world, we would have layers of dirt that would suggest that it was the roof, but here you can't, because everything's
Right.
a 1 meter block.
Right.
So it's a lot harder to do that unless I wanted to make this thing like 20 blocks deep, with like each individual layer divided by dirt. So which
And that
I
would have
was
been
not
very
gonna do.
complicated to
Oh yeah.
reconstruct as well as to create from the beginning.
Right.
Oh yeah, super super hard. But like if you found charcoal, like in here, yeah, I put charcoal in lines, but maybe you like, oh hey, I've got charcoal here. Is it roof material or are they beams? And I could be like,
Right.
oh, this is obviously a beam, because it's hard to differentiate beam charcoal and roof charcoal in this game. But as Harold probably knows, if we find a burned beam, it is a beam. Like
It's more
it's a beam.
obvious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely obvious. Whereas if you find burnt roof material, it's real thin and it's like a lens in the ground, So it's totally different. And I kind of wish they made a black wood, because that would have made that a lot easier, because I would have put some
Oh,
black wood
yeah.
in there, um, you know. But so that's why I put and of course you guys caught it. That's why I put this one beam here on the outside,
Mhm.
and then some charcoal, so that you would see like, oh, these are beams, and then you would put the roof over
Yep.
it. So yeah.
Which,
Yeah,
which,
I
which
really
for,
like the idea of doing like just a couple of questions, because like
Yeah.
I probably would have asked like what potentially like what species did the
Yeah.
bone come from, or I would have asked
Yeah.
maybe on the charcoal
Mm.
to be like, is this like what, like, is it burnt bone, or is it burnt wood, or is it burnt
Mhm.
bamboo, or is it burnt, because you'd be able to tell that, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
and so you could, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or like quantity, it's like it's hard to tell what the quantity is. You could have a little bit of charcoal and it's like whatever, a centimeter cube, you know what I mean, is different than, like you're saying, like a plank.
Yeah.
You would just be able to represent it as charcoal.
Well, and
full
then
stop.
and then there's, there was always the possibility of using this, but the problem with that is that
It's
is
coal.
coal, not
Coal,
charcoal.
very
Yep.
different.
And I was like, because I thought about using that to represent some of the beams, but then I realized, well, no, because if they really look into it and they're like, well, this is coal, not charcoal, then that would be something completely different.
Yep.
Because that's not burnt
Mhm.
beams, that's not burnt wood. That's something that's been in the ground for a long time.
Yeah, that's
certain
fuel.
processes, and exactly.
Which I drew that distinction in my videos, right? The distinction between coal is being used as fuel and the charcoal is remains.
Yeah.
Right.
I just
actually
looked down
drew
at
that line.
I just looked down at my chat and somebody just asked right before I did that, could you have used a coal block instead of a black burnt wood?
Nice.
It's like, yeah. No, that's funny. So see, you're on the same wavelength I am, my friend. So
I think once in my reconstruction, I actually, because in that room that had a whole bunch of charcoal, I actually put a coal block and then put it in like a quote unquote barrel, right? You know, but I didn't like doing that, like because of exactly that reason, like, but there isn't another equivalent.
Yeah. I do kind of wish they had like a black wood. Well, they have a white wood, so maybe the next one's gonna be
There you
an
go.
ebony or something.
Start
Ebony
petitioning
would be cool.
Mojang now for it.
Yeah, exactly. Or different types of charcoal, like you put a log in and you get a block of charcoal, but you put like slabs in, you get regular charcoal or something like that. That would be nice.
Now we're getting
Yeah.
burnt leaves from putting leaves in, so who knows?
That's right. That's right.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, who knows? Yeah. All right. Anyone else have any other questions before we wrap it up?
No, I don't think
So I have a question for you, Daskalos, and this might be so I know that like people who are archaeologists and archaeology fans watch your channel a lot and probably give a lot more opinions to give opinions to the way you do things. Were there any opinions you got with the way you ruined the way that you took your original structure and then turned it into ruins? Were there any opinions that you got from the public about like either you did a good job with that, a bad job with that, or whatever, realistic, unrealistic? Did you get any kind of feedback like that?
That's a good question. I don't remember anything that at least stands out. But I feel like somebody might have said something that I immediately looked at and went like, whatever, because it was less of a suggestion and more of a you're a terrible person for doing this type of comment. And I don't maybe it was on someone else's video. But yeah, there's always people with opinions on how to do something like this better.
Sure.
But ultimately, I think that. I think I probably could have put in a little bit more in the way of clues on certain things, but I figured at the time when I was building it, I thought, okay, I want them to be able to reconstruct this the way I saw it. And I honestly figured all the reconstructions, or at least, the materials and the floor plans and everything would have been the same, which is why I put so much emphasis on interpretation, when I now realize I didn't necessarily need to do that, because there was enough differentiation between how, for like example, this building, some of you didn't have these beams in between, and one of you had a roof that went all the way across, and a couple of you had all four residences connected with doorways like into the other residence, whereas I have, this one is a 3-room residence, that one's a 3-room residence. You can't get between the two of them unless you go out and in through the other door, type of thing. So yeah, I probably could have done things a little bit easier. Probably could have given you a little bit more material for the second story, or even just buried like the floor material over some mud brick, and then under another mud brick probably would have been enough to give you the clue that was a second story. But who knows? Hindsight is 2020 here, so it's easy for people to come up with suggestions when they see how you are reacting to it in real time, whereas I had to sort of guess on what would be too hard or too easy. And so, yeah, I'm sure there was a couple suggestions that I saw that I immediately just dismissed because they were, somebody whining or somebody thinking it was a terrible idea on my part. And it's like, well, yeah, but come on, man. Like, really? I'm not gonna,
Right.
so yeah.
That's funny. So,
Yeah.
so this might be a nice question. Maybe if we're looking to wrap up, this might be a nice one to end. So it was, why did Daskalos decide to do this challenge, and what made you all say yes?
So funny thing is, I didn't even come up with this challenge. It was someone else who had suggested it. It was someone in the comments section that said, "Hey, you should," and I can't remember how they phrased it. It's in my very first video, but the way that they phrased it was a little differently than what I did here because I saw that and I thought, "Oh, that's a great idea." And then I thought I should do that, but tweak it just a little bit, and I think they wanted me to ruin something and then rebuild it or whatever. But yeah, so I thought, oh, we can make it better. We can do it even better. And I thought this would be a really neat series to do to have all of you participate in. And in the beginning, I was like, oh, maybe I should just have one or two people. And then I thought, well, no, I should just do, we'll do three. And that way I can have different levels of archaeological knowledge and see if that changes things.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course we realized that the surroundings kind of changed everything too. And then we had the weird issue with the suspicious gravel not popping things out the way it should and all that. So yeah, so there was some hiccups. But yeah,
Not
it
too
was
bad for a first try. Like,
Yeah, I thought this
Yeah.
went surprisingly well,
Yeah.
and I was really astounded with how close everyone's builds were.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think if I were to do this again, I might change the criteria a little bit because of how close everything was. I was expecting there to be a pretty big gap, but it really came down to if someone had just interpreted something differently, it would be a completely different lineup. But when you look at each person's settlement, they are so vastly different in how they look and feel that it doesn't make sense that the scores were that close. 59, 60, and 61 were the scores. So it doesn't, those three settlements, when you look at them, don't look like they are that similar to each other. But because of my criteria, because of my grading criteria, it ended up that way. And so I think if I were to do it again, I think we would change things up a bit. And I think we'd probably change up the rules just a tiny bit too to make it a little more engaging and a little more fair, so that you're not going into it all sort of out there in the wind, basically, to try to figure out what I meant by something. I think if we were to do it again, I would say, like, look, this is, base this on real world or base this on Minecraft mechanics. I wouldn't just leave it open like that. Because I figured it was obvious. Obviously, it's obvious to me because I'm the one building it, but I just figured it was obvious that this was going to be Minecraft mechanics. I never expected you to be like, well, in the real world, it would be like this. And I'm just like, oh no, that's not what I meant. And then,
It's
but
like
it was
an
already
artist
too
painting
far.
abstract art. Like, you know exactly what you're painting, but everybody else, but
Yeah,
we
and so
figured it out. Like,
yeah, and at that point, it was already too late for me to show up and be like, hey, by the way, everybody, consider this like a regular Minecraft village, just another time. And yeah, it was already too late, so we couldn't fix it. But yeah. So yeah, that's yeah, it wasn't my idea, it was someone else's. I just took it and improved on it or changed it a bit to make it fit this idea, and wanted to see how everyone did. And I was really curious to see how everyone did, coming from both, because everyone here has experience in Minecraft. Everyone has different building techniques and different building styles, but then throwing in that little variable of a lot of archaeological knowledge, some archaeological knowledge through osmosis, and then no archaeological knowledge, and seeing how that changes the product coming out. And
Yeah, and I was a last minute ad for a couple
Mhm.
days out, so I had no idea what we were going
Yep.
into.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. I'd be curious to see how it would have turned out if we had the other person that I was wanting to bring on to see what his interpretation would have been like.
Yeah, I would have been
Kind of
very
curious.
interested. I'm like,
So
if you can ever have him again during another one, I would love to
yeah,
watch that. So
yeah, we'll see. Maybe I can't send him this file because he's probably already seen it. So all right. So any other questions, or should we wrap this up?
Yep, there was one last one in my chat,
Mhm.
and was a second older settlement located beneath this one ever considered?
I had considered that, and I threw it out immediately because I figured it was too much.
Too much.
That is
yeah.
actually why one of the criteria was the extent of the excavation,
Mhm.
because I wanted to see if you looked for that. But all I was looking for was to make sure that you excavated the entirety of
Mhm.
the settlement, and all of you in some place or another went down a little bit lower than the foundations, and so
Mhm.
that was good enough for me. But I had thought about doing that, and I thought that was really mean to do that, because then you have to make the decision on which one you're gonna represent.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And so
Yeah,
yeah,
I didn't do it to the extent of Harold, but I looked out like during all of the other flat land that was out and around the base, like dig, 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 dig. Okay, nothing in here. Dig, 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 dig. Okay, nothing in here. Just in case you would put something
yeah,
outside of the main city center
yeah.
just to throw us off.
Yeah. And what's funny about and I had actually thought about doing that, not because of my archaeological background, but because of this weird glitch in the ancient city. There is a, a chest minecart that is inside one of the just like a solid block of whatever. It's just
Huh.
the terrain
What?
generation, but it's a single. I
Yeah.
sent you a picture
Oh,
of it. It's
I don't remember.
yeah, it's seriously, because when when I was zipping around in spectator mode, I looked over and I said, "What the hell's that?" And it was a minecart chest, and it's just in a world of black. There's no, it's not sitting in a cavern or anything. It just generated its own lone block in a bunch of deep slate. And I thought, ooh, I should put something underneath to throw them for a loop. And then I thought, no, that's mean. That's just mean.
Especially since we couldn't go into spectator, and you very
Yeah,
specifically
exactly.
said, "Do not
Do
look
not do that.
underground."
Yeah, exactly. So, all right.
Cool. And there,
Well,
okay.
that's it.
Well,
Oh.
we keep saying one last one, but there was one last one that just came in, and
Okay.
said it was actually, I think it might have been someone from your chat, Daskalos, that one of my chat person put in. Said, did you notice differences in method, not necessarily referring to the results, but the differences in the methods that we used?
Oh yeah. So we talked about that earlier with
Mhm.
the results, and yeah, or not
Go
the
watch
results,
the
but the
videos,
methods.
guys. We were definitely all very
Oh,
different
yeah.
in our methods.
Very
like-
different
Yeah.
methods.
Yeah, no, I spied a couple times, and I made sure to spy every now and then, just to make sure that they were on the right path and not getting a little too wild out there and doing crazy stuff, just to sort of make sure that it wasn't a terrible thing that I was doing to them. And so I did spy a couple times throughout their entire playthrough. And I definitely took a deep breath when I popped into Oda's spot and saw all the lightning rods, and was like, "What is going on here?" And I thought, why didn't he just build that up in the sky? I don't get why he did it on the ground. But so yeah, I did notice some differences in method, and like I mentioned earlier, I don't think it really changed the result or changed the interpretation, and I don't think that method played as big of a part in this as it would have in the real world, because
Right.
again, this is a game. This is totally a game.
Mhm.
In the real world, this probably would have taken years of
Mhm.
excavation, at least a decade of excavation, to take this all out and to do what we did here, and it would have probably made several PhDs at this point.
Yep.
And lots of dissertations and stuff.
And I also think it wouldn't have been this complete either. Like, it would have been,
Mm-mm.
partial. I don't think you know, it wouldn't have all been excavated like
No.
this, you know,
No.
like it would have
No.
been this part, that part, you know, unless there was like a big road coming through or you know, some reason that the whole thing would need to be excavated, it
Right.
wouldn't have all been excavated.
Right. Yeah.
And you wouldn't have recreated like this. It would have been backfilled, you know.
Yep. Yeah, you would have had artist recreations or small
Mhm.
dioramas or stuff like that in a
Mhm.
museum
Yeah.
somewhere. You wouldn't have this rebuilt like this because this is just isn't something that we do nowadays. Which is a good time to plug my thesis. I am
Yeah.
doing this, but virtually, so you know that's. But okay, so if that is it, then we will go ahead and sign off. We all good?
Yeah.
Yeah,
This was
this
super
was
fun.
cool.
Sounds good. Thank
Good
you so
deal.
much for having
Yeah.
us and
Yes.
for the follow up here. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Appreciate all the
yeah,
questions.
Yep. And again,
Yeah,
thanks
definitely.
for setting all this up, Daskalos. Like this was a really fun thing to do, and if we ever do anything like it again, I would absolutely love to be a part of it because this was
Yeah,
a blast.
completely.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. I know this was a little bit longer than usual, and thank you guys for being here. I know I'm taking time out of your Saturday, time out of my Saturday too, so I'm suffering with you. But all right. Well then I will see you guys later.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.